is really going on with Margo in that scene. Like, Q walks past Margo and he thinks that she's laughing, there's something hilarious, or she's gotten some amazingly wonderful surprise. Because it is literally impossible for Q to imagine a world in which Margo's life is not awesome. And so it never occurs to him, what's actually happening never occurs to him, which is that in reality, Margo is finding out that her boyfriend has been hooking up with Becca Arrington, which is disgusting on like 8 different levels. And Q can't realize that, because when he looks at Margo, he doesn't see Margo. He sees some funhouse mirror version of himself. Like, when he looks at Margo, what he sees says more about Q than it does about Margo. That's the reason there are 2 covers to this book. Someone can hold up the yellow cover, I'm sure. Yeah, okay, good work. For the non-person in the audience who's not familiar with the 2 covers. So there are 2 covers to this book. They're both equally incorrect ways of imagining Margo. Like, they're both wrong. And which one you prefer says a lot more about you than it does about Margo. That was our idea. Margo's last name is Spiegelman. Her name is Margo Roth Spiegelman. Roth means red. There's a lot of black and white in the novel, obviously. There's the Black Santas, which are, trying to get us to challenge the way we imagine our stories. And then there's quite a bit of a white whale. And then later in the book, of course, there's a large, entirely white cow that they refer to as a land whale, and not coincidentally. So that's why Margo's middle name is Roth. The red is meant to separate her from this dichotomous imagination that runs throughout so much of the book. Her last name, Spiegelman, is a German word. It means mirror maker. Like the dude in the old German village who wasn't the cabinet maker or the blacksmith, the guy who made the mirrors, was the Spiegelman. And that's what Margo is. When you look at Margo, the characters in the book look at Margo, they don't see Margo. They see something reflected back about themselves. That's what ultimately makes it so hard to find Margo when she disappears, is that the kids in the book are not imagining her well. They are not imagining her as a complex human being. They are imagining her as a simple set of ideas, whether it's Ben just being sort of dismissive of her and saying, like, she's just another popular girl doing crazy, stupid popular girl stuff, or it's Q, who, like, way romanticizes her and thinks that she's more than human and thinks that like, Margo has a level of awesome available to her that's not available to the rest of us. Like, there is a synonymous phenomenon in the world of girls looking at boys, which is called the Edward Cullenization of or people in the audience who don't know who Edward Cullen is, or all of the guys. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm going to talk about, actually. So, Edward Cullen is this... there's this very popular series of books for teenagers called Twilight that they're making a movie of it soon. And the books star a young woman named Bella whose 2 primary characteristics... And by the way, I like the Twilight books, so I'm not digging on them at all. But Bella's 2 primary characteristics as a human being are that sometimes she feels pretty and sometimes she doesn't. And she trips a lot. And there's a 3rd thing, she smells awesome to vampires. Which is convenient because there's this 107-year-old vampire who is really, really pale and has an extremely angular face and his eyes change color depending on how hungry he is, and he just wants to cuddle. But he does. But he's a little bit dangerous because he also kind of wants to eat you. But when that urge overtakes him, he will like literally go to the other side of the world to keep himself from you because he is freaking perfect. And Margo Roth Spiegelman is the female version of the Edward Cullen character. When boys imagine girls who are more than human, they think of the kind of girl who's like Margo Roth Spiegelman. My friend Nathan Rabin, who works at The Onion, termed this girl the Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which I think is pretty perfect. You may remember the Manic Pixie Dream Girl from such movies as Garden State or from such books as The Virgin Suicides or Looking for Alaska. And here's the thing about Edward Cullen and the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. They're like hugely treacherous lies. And they're wonderfully alluring lies, but there's something dangerous about the lie, because just as it's dangerous to dehumanize someone, to imagine someone as less than human, not to acknowledge the complexity of people, it's also super dangerous to pretend that people are somehow more than people, to pretend that they're more awesome than we can be. I think that two sides of the same coin. What we're failing to do in each case is we're failing to see the other as totally human. I can think of two examples in the video. By the way, how many people here watch my video blog a lot? How many people don't? Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. Okay, none of this, what I'm about to say, is going to make any sense, but there is a large majority of people who are in a different camp, so we're just going to go with that. I can think of two examples of this in the stuff that we've done recently. When we raised all that money for Sean in Bangladesh, what we were doing was not just raising money for Sean in Bangladesh. We were raising money for Sean in Bangladesh so that he could distribute the money through Save the Children in a way that would allow us to see the people who were getting that money in a visceral way, to experience them as human beings, not as like a postcard where it's like, I'm so hungry, but as like regular human beings who are speaking in a language, who live lives, who have birthdays. I always think, whenever I think about this, I always think about when the invasion of Iraq, the second one in 2003 happened. My best friend and roommate was this guy, Hassan al-Rawaf. And Hassan's family lived on the Kuwait-Iraq border, and he didn't hear from his family for 6 weeks after the invasion, and he was completely freaked out, which is totally understandable. I would have been freaked out too. But his reaction to being freaked out was that he insisted on watching Fox News literally 20 hours a day. Because he would yell at the TV, and it was just cathartic for him for some reason, but we only had one television, and I would every now and again, we would all, the rest of the roommates would come in and kind of stage an intervention and say, Hassan, your parents are not about to be on TV, and we want to watch Friends. But he would never give it up. So anyway, one day I'm watching, right after Baghdad falls, I'm watching Fox News with Hassan one afternoon. And it's one of those situations where the camera footage is coming in, and it's brand new footage is coming in, it's brand new, the anchor's watching it for the first time, and I'm also watching it for the first time, but because he has a mic and I don't, he gets to talk about it like he's some kind of authority. And there's a huge hole in this house, in the side of a wall of a house, and there's all this plywood over the hole, and on the plywood is scrawled in black spray paint this really angry-looking Arabic graffiti. And the guy on TV is talking about the hatred in the hearts of the Iraqi people and the anger on the Arab street and everything, and Hassan starts to laugh. And I say, what's so funny? And he said, the graffiti. And I said, what's funny about it? And he said, it says, happy birthday, sir, despite the circumstances. This is what we forget about when we dehumanize the other, when we think of other people as being less fully human than us. That every day during the fall of Baghdad, it was some dude's birthday, And that doesn't have to be a bad day, It's not simply a bad day, Being poor, being in radical poverty, being in $1 a day poverty does not simply suck. It is much more complicated than simply sucking. There is much more going on in your life than simply being poor. There are all kinds of emotional connections. That's why Hank attacked Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which pissed off a lot of psychology students, but I think he was right. So, the other thing that I would say, the other comparison that I would make is when I think about Catcher in the Rye, when I think about Holden Caulfield, which we all read together and talked about together, when I think about Holden Caulfield, kicked out of boarding school, walking around New York for 2 days, trying to do nothing. He had no goal except to get one person to listen to him. And failing and failing and failing and failing, which is all of our experiences. It's Margo Spiegelman and Q's experience in the book, but I think it's all of our experiences that we need, and we desperately want people to acknowledge the reality of our experience, to acknowledge the reality of our feelings, to acknowledge the seriousness of them, to say, yes, what you are going through matters, and I will listen to you talk about it. That's what we all desperately, desperately want, and we never adequately get, because other people are stuck inside of their skin-encased enclosures, and they are busy being themselves, and so it is so super hard for them to imagine us, just as it's hard for us to imagine them. Our responsibility to Holden Caulfield, to each other, to people living in Bangladesh, is to try to imagine one another much more complexly, to try to acknowledge the complexity of others as we acknowledge the complexity of ourselves. Like Whitman so memorably wrote in Leaves of Grass, which, as you may have noticed, is a poem I like, I contain multitudes. And I do. I'm both smart and stupid, both not ugly and ugly, both cool and lame, or jokes and nerdy. I am all of these things at once, but it's much easier when I'm dealing with someone who listens to me to say that they are one or the other. And I think that to view ourselves this to view other people this dichotomous way is really troubling. And that's what inspired me to write Paper Town. It's also what inspires me to make video blogs, and in a broader sense, like, makes me want to do all of the work that I do. Now I will take your many fascinating questions.